Dominic Xavier, SJ, Vice Principal Raghabpur Campus, Reverend Father Johnson Padiara, SJ, Vice Principal Arts and Science Departments, Professor Bertram da Silva, Academic Council Secretary, Dr. Ayan Chandro, Assistant Controller of Examinations, Dr. Arup Mitro, Bhaktivedanta Research Center, Kolkata, Dr. Ferdinando Sardella, Associate Professor, Department of Ethnology, History of Religions and Gender Studies, Stockhome University, Dr. Sheikh Makbul Islam, Associate Professor, Department of Bengali, St. Paul's Cathedral Mission College, Kolkata, and founder, Sri Jagannath Research Center, Kolkata, Dr. Shormishtha De Bosu, Secretary, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, Dr. Abhishek Bose, Assistant Professor, Department of Comparative Language, Indian Language and Literature, distinguished speakers, professors, dignitaries, and participants. We are privileged to have you with us this evening at the inaugural session of the 5-day-long International Faculty Development Program on Research Methods in Social Sciences with focus on cultural studies. St. Xavier's College Autonomous Kolkata has a rich tradition of active participation in cultural studies and promotion of interdisciplinary research. In keeping with this practice, the present faculty development program is an attempt to bring together leading academicians and researchers from the areas of ethnology, religious studies, gender studies, anthropology, philosophy, Indic studies, history, political science, psychology, as also comparative language and literature to share with us their knowledge and expertise on research methods in social science, particularly in cultural studies. We would like to thank you from the core of our hearts for being a part of this faculty development program. Thank you for being with us. We are extremely grateful to our principal, Reverend Dr. Dominic Xavier, SJ, for his constant inspiration and encouragement to organize this program. May I now request Father Principal to kindly inaugurate this faculty development program with the welcome and keynote address.
Very good evening to all of you. Thank you very much, Dr. Parthapratim Ghosh and Dr. Trini Goswami. Reverend Father Johnson Padiara, Vice Principal, Raghabpur Campus. Professor Bertram da Silva, Vice Principal, Arts and Science Departments. Distinguished academic collaborators, leading academicians, researchers, and participants. I would like to welcome you all to this 5-day online faculty development program on research methods in social sciences with the focus on cultural studies. The importance of research or the quest for seeking truth in the field of social sciences has been recognized since the beginning of the civilization. In the writings of Herodotus, the father of history, and also those of Thucydides, we find the quasi-historical perceptions which show an ardent desire to explore the past. In due course of time, the discourses on history and other social sciences gradually evolved with the connotations of humanism, substantialism, universal consciousness, eschatology, critics of philosophy, enlightenment, and so on. It is perhaps difficult to determine the scope of social sciences because various thoughts and branches of knowledge pave the way for the better understanding of the society, leading towards plurality. The intellectual revelation of society leads us to decipher various norms related to human behavior, which according to Comte's law of 3 stages can lead to the maximum development through third and final positive stage of societal evolution. Herbert Spencer Herbert Spencer, while constructing the image of society, harps on progressiveness of the physical world, biological organisms, the human mind, and human culture. Knowledge as a subjective component, as propounded by Collingwood, and also an objective entity as perceived by Berry, seeks further explanations in trying to reach out to truth. Through this program, we are trying to rethink our perceptions of epistemology based on social sciences. Though it is ontological praxis is always interdisciplinary, it is a priori that the terms society and culture are inseparable, and culture has various facets of revelation based on human experiences and revelations. From this perspective, I expect this academic endeavor might encourage the scholars to get fresh insights on the qualitative approaches of social science researchers with special emphasis on cultural significance. In this faculty development program, the distinguished speakers will enlighten us with their scholarly deliberations, highlighting research methodologies of their specific fields. The diversity of topics, starting from feminist research methodology to psychology, anthropology, comparative literature, religious studies, history of the environment, anthropology, South Asian studies, digital humanities, folklore, manuscriptology, and so on will surely create a platform where we might expect fruitful communications and constructive criticisms. The cultural dimension of a particular topic create a number of discourses which can focus on theories such as positivism, structuralism, postmodernism, and hermeneutic method. The discussion on environmental history of Northeast India would definitely lead us to experience the colonial exploitation, where we can situate the Marxian approach of class struggle and exploitation. On the other hand, the intricacies of the village communities might reveal a tendency to draw a converse of the total history, as pointed out by Lucien Febvre, Marc Bloch, and the Annales schools. The discourse on South Asian studies can form a rich and interesting body of knowledge if we corroborate the subaltern rationale leading towards history from below. We hope the lectures on comparison as a way of knowing in the study of religion and the openness of differences in study of religion will enrich our understanding on religious studies with a certain uniqueness that might make us believe in discontinuity. As mentioned by Foucault, new thoughts nourish our intellect. The lectures on India's past and her heritage will be beneficial for our participants as the tenets of Orientalism from the Saidian perspective will be revisited or revived or might welcome criticism. I would like to mention an interesting article, namely Shades of Orientalism, Paradoxes and Problems in Indian Historiography by Peter Heggs, who has taken an initiative to develop various shades of Orientalism in the lights of comparisons between the writings of various Orientalists and Sri Aurobindo, where national discourses on Orientalism play an emblematic role. I strongly believe the upcoming lectures will add more value to this intellectual dialogue. I believe that the lectures on medical literature and the methods of comparative literature will contribute significantly to the broader conceptualization of the cultural studies through the dissemination of new ideas that are essential for deconstructing the existing norms where the words of expression are allegorical, as explained by Derrida. Lastly, as per the teachings of St. Ignatius of Loyola, knowledge is divine as it imparts on the awakening of mind. The utmost dedication for seeking the truth motivates humans to strive for excellence, where they can achieve success only if they transform themselves as men and women for others. The outcomes of this faculty development program will surely make us more confident through our intellectual uplift, and the experience of the upcoming 5 days will definitely be advantageous for the participants in terms of academic understanding of social sciences with its variations. I believe in the concept of holistic education, the essence of which are the components of universalism and tolerance. As this faculty development program will be dealing with discourses on plurality, it will surely guide the scholars towards the path of knowledge, kindled in the light of inquisitive mind and encouraged with the zeal for absorbing the truth. I would like to thank the Department of History, St. Xavier's College Autonomous Kolkata, Raghabpur campus, Internal Quality Assurance Cell, St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, Bhaktivedanta Research Center, Kolkata, Department of Ethnology, History of Religion and Center Studies, Stockhome University, Sri Jagannath Research Center, St. Paul's Cathedral Mission College, Kolkata, and the Kolkata Society for Asian Studies for this collaborative initiative to promote interdisciplinary research and generate analytical ideas through academic exchange. I am sure that this program will achieve great success. May God bless us all and protect humanity from the present grave situation. Wish you all the best. May God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Father, for your speech, and hope that your blessings are always with us so that we can serve the humanity better. Thank you, Dr. Parthopratim Ghosh, sir, for your support and guidance. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Ferdinando Sardella to introduce the theme of this faculty development program.
Thank you very much. Dear professors, teachers, researchers, and doctoral students, philosophy is the mother of all the subjects as opined by scholars. And I will start with a few points about philosophy, then discuss critical realism, and at the end, agent and subjectivity in the Indic studies. In philosophy, there are in general two key points for social sciences, that is epistemology and ontology. Ontology is about reality, such as virus COVID-19. And epistemology is about knowledge, such as how do you know what caused it. When it comes to ontology, there is two basic positions, realism and irrealism, that is non-realism. Realists think that there is a real universe. The other position is irrealism, which denies that there is a real universe, meaning that there is no reality, such as in the social world. In epistemology, there is two positions. There are objectivist and subjectivist, with some positions that fall in the middle. An objectivist position assumes that there is no difficulty in producing knowledge about the world. A subjectivist position is more skeptical. Researchers might argue that our knowledge could be wrong and always changing and transforming, that is, our knowledge is fallible. Subjectivists argue that all our observations are human and theory dependent. A philosophical position thus is made of ontology for realism or irrealism and epistemology for objectivism or subjectivism. This results in three different philosophical positions. One, positivism with realism and objectivism. Two, constructivism with irrealism and subjectivism. And the third one, I suggest, critical realism with realism and subjectivism, which I discuss soon. The first philosophical position is positivism, which takes a realist and objectivist stance. It assumes that the world consists of real things, matter, specifically universal laws. We produce knowledge in objective ways. The problem with positivist ontology is that universal laws do not exist for inside humans, their minds and thinking. The second philosophical position is constructivism, which takes an irrealist and subjectivist stance. In the social sciences, constructivism at times tends to influence studies by encouraging the focus on discourse, meaning, or the experiences of people. This is not a false ontology. The problem is that constructivism may take a too narrow position of a perspective on the world. One possible path is a holistic methodology called critical realism that works with causality for social sciences. This is a suggestion. Philosophers such as British Collingwood stated that causality with reason belongs to the realm of human praxis, and causal analysis proper is well suited for the social sciences. Ram Roy Bhaskar, a philosopher, was born in 1944, had an Indian father, a doctor, and an English mother, an industrial administrator. Roy gained a PhD degree at Balliol College in Oxford and spent the rest of his life to develop critical realism. Critical realism acknowledges that the world is real and that knowledge production is fallible and theory dependent, but not fixed or theory determined. It also agrees with constructivism that meaning and discourse are important, but they are not the only things that exist. Two of the main conclusions of critical realism, which can be important for social sciences researchers, are number one, research should look for causal tendencies, and number two, social sciences research must consider both agency and structure. Let me explain it in the following. According to critical realism, the world has three domains. One, the empirical, that is the events we experience. Two, the actual, that is containing events that are not always experienced, such as a tree falls even if no one is around to see it. Three, domain of the real, containing causal mechanisms. Mechanisms are at times subtle structures that cause events, for example, the gravity that caused the apple to fall on Isaac Newton. Causal mechanisms act here as tendencies. For example, if a study concluded that girls and boys tend to perform less well in maths, this does not allow us to perfectly predict maths scores in the future. There is only a tendency. Critical realism shows that our research must, at least in part, look at causal mechanisms and how they act as tendencies to influence the world we observe. Critical realism also uses so-called retroductive arguments, as in the example of Newton and gravity, to show that both agency and social structures are real. They are both ontological features of the world, and they exist together in relationships. Social structures influence the actions of individuals. Individuals can then reproduce or transform these society structures through their actions. So when we turn to do research, a good way of critical realism from Tom Fryer from the University of Manchester is to ask, one, which philosophy underlies my research? Number two, does my research look for causal mechanisms that act as tendencies? Number three, have I considered both structure and agency? These three questions can be regarded as on the way to a good project, according to critical realism. Ramboy Bhaskar's suggestion of critical realism appears to be partially inspired by Indian philosophy. The retroductive arguments is similar to reason anumana in Indian epistemology, such as the following of Nyaya philosophy. There is a fire on the hill because there is smoke on the hill. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire, like a kitchen hearth, and unlike a lake, this hill is likewise smoky, thus there is fire on the hill. knowledge based on reason about the made from seeing a smoke on a hill, which is similar to the other arguments mentioned before. After ontology and epistemology, as well as critical realism, a third point is about cultural studies, Indian philosophy and Indology. Cultural studies aim to examine its subject matter in terms of cultural practices and their relation to things such as influence and power, among others. From this perspective, religion and culture are inseparable, as beliefs and practices are uniquely cultural. For example, religious rituals, one type of practice, divide or unite believers in a religion. Religion, or the better name for it, dharma in India, as well as Christianity, Islam, Sikhism, and others, are an essential element of the human condition. Indian religions and secularism are not as divided and separated as they are in the West, which naturally opens the possibility to find new ways of research. In particular, research has explored how an individual's religion, such as religious beliefs, religious denomination, strength of religious devotion, is linked to their cultural beliefs and background. While some researchers have asserted that religion is an essential part of an individual's culture, that is, as the agent, other researchers have focused more on how religion is a culture in itself, a structure. The key difference is how researchers conceptualize and operationalize both of these terms between agent and structure. The study of Indian system of learning are crucially dependent on, for example, axiology, that is the study of values such as goodness. Epistemology is the pillar of the Indian philosophy. One important aspect of Indian philosophy is the study of consciousness. It is the epistemology's subjectivity, the social sciences agent, as well as the key of causal mechanisms that act as various tendencies for humans. Humans have bodies with a brain, a mind, reason, and identity as gender, but these are viewed as material and subtle matter from the Indian ancient system. Consciousness, according to the Upanishads, is called Atman, the transcendental and metaphysic spiritual soul or self within, which is also developed through inwardness and practices such as spiritual sound, such as Om. Religions such as Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism, and others have a similar concept of the self that is higher than the body and the brain. Consciousness as a possible interdisciplinary science is studied today as a cause of reincarnation by the Division of Perceptual Studies of the University of Virginia in the US. Another one is near-death experience, which is studied by the International Association for Near-Death Studies in North Carolina in the US, with the only journal in this area, the Journal of Near-Death Studies. Another interesting interdisciplinary part of social studies and humanities is ecology, the understanding of the value and conscious importance of animals, trees, rivers, and nature in a holistic understanding of life. This is part of Indic studies, but it can also be studied as general culture. There are as well interesting studies of religion and spirituality, of both mental health and physical health, for example. A last example is interreligious social research between, for example, Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam, where there are common principles such as consciousness, as well as structure of human relations. With this backdrop, I conclude by a brief summary of the content of the program. A social science researcher has to know the nitty-gritty of anticipating knowledge, which will help him her to experience the essence of research on the basis of epistemology and ontology. Through this workshop, the participants will be able to get an idea about the recent trends of research in social sciences and humanities, focusing on the core of the qualitative methods aiming for research designing, hypothesis formation, data collection, survey methods, field study, content analysis, and others with a notion of criticality. The workshop will be also highlighting on the research issues related to Indic studies and Indology. I look forward to the large coming field of presentations with discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we would like to have our first session. For this session, we have our speaker, Dr. Kaveri Chakraborty. So I will introduce ma'am. Dr. Kaveri Chakraborty graduated from Presidency College with political science as honors and obtained her postgraduate degree in political science and PhD from University of Calcutta. She taught at the undergraduate level for 8 years and have joined the Department of Political Science, University of Calcutta in 2004. She was associated with IDSK and Women Study Research Center, Calcutta University as associate faculty. Her area of research interest is politics, of communication in general, and development communication, gender, and media in particular. She teaches courses on development studies, gender, and social movements. Ma'am, welcome, and you have 30 minutes for your presentation and 15 minutes for discussion. After the presentation, I would like to request the participants, if you have any question, kindly type your question in the chat box. Now, ma'am, please take over the session and enlighten us with your erudite deliberation.
Good afternoon, and thank you all, the organizers, to give me the chance to present my thoughts in this important faculty development program. And this is a very pleasant occasion for me to, in fact, start a session. And I thank all of you, all the organizers, the participants, particularly. I hope I can do justice as the first speaker. The first important thing I would like to say that this is a research methodology. This is a faculty development program mostly oriented to the research methodology issues. So in my lecture, I would also like to discuss feminist research from these methodological vantage points. And I hope I may do some justice to the challenges in feminist research methods in this brief time period. And I would like to share the with some presentation and then the PowerPoint one. And I hope it would be easier for us to discuss with the basic notes written in the PowerPoint. So let me just start this thing. Will you please, Dr. Goswami, will you please allow me to start the sharing of screen?
Yes, sure. So I would like to request the technical committee to make ma'am the co-host so that she can share her PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
Ma'am, it's fine for you, or do you need any help? Can you share your PPT?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me just check it, whether you can see it or not. Can you see it?
No, ma'am, we can't.
You can't?
Yes, ma'am, we can't see your PPT.
Oh. Then will you Just a minute.
Ma'am, do you like us to share the PPT on your behalf?
Yeah, you can do that, because to my part it's showing that one participant can share at a time. So I think
Just give us 1 minute, ma'am. We will do the needful.
okay. I think it would be all participants, then I can share it.
Dear participants and respected dignitaries, we are facing a technical glitch. Please bear with us. Thank you for your cooperation. And I request the technical team kindly share the PPT of Dr. Kaveri Chakraborty. Thank you.
Dr. Goswami, I think it's not enabled. Just host is able to share only. It's showing.
Ma'am, just give us 1 minute. We are
Yeah,
trying to fix the
yeah.
problem.
The host needs to allow me to share my screen. Otherwise, I'm not being able to do that.
Ma'am, is this your PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, yes.
I think this is the, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Ma'am, whenever you need the slide change, please let us know. So we will be changing the slides, as per your instructions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. Then my it's visible now.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay. So this is my broad theme, that challenges in feminist research methods. Next slide, please.
The next slide.
Yes. No, this one. Okay. Thank you. Yes. As we know, and we have been introduced already by Dr. Ferdinando, that social research is all about production of social knowledge, and methods are actually about the techniques, about the tools of research, data collection, etc., and which is guided by some rationale, some research strategy or methodological knowledge, mediated by epistemological positions. Now, for me, I would like to start with this very important question, that is there any feminist research method at all? And to emphasize on this prefix feminist. And if there are feminist research methods, and in this point, I would like to make second important question in feminist research, discussing understanding feminist research, that what actually makes feminist research unique. And challenges in feminist research are actually to be understood in the light of this debate on methods, methodology, and this prefix, that is feminism or feminist itself. So next slides. So to discuss this, I would like to start with two core dimensions of feminist research. Now, to start with, there is nothing distinctive about feminist methods. I would like to start with this submission, like many other feminist scholars, that there is nothing such distinctive about feminist methods, because methods used in other social researches are broadly used in feminist researches. Then what makes feminist research unique, or how in the feminist researches, we understand method as important? It is actually the perspective that makes feminist research unique. Perspective means here looking at an issue from feminist perspective. So when we talk about, once again, feminist perspective, we know there are not one single perspective, rather multiple perspectives. So the two broad or core dimensions of feminist research are: number one, that feminist research promotes new knowledge about women, and of late we talk about incorporating about gender, to study women's experiences of everyday living, recognizing the sexual gender divisions of society, to understand the patriarchal system, norms, culture, values, the structures, and to enrich research with these assumptions, and particularly with women's perspectives. So this is the first most important feature or dimension of feminist research that makes it different from other researches. The second important one is the goals of feminist research. There is an evident goal of feminist research, a professed goal of feminist research, that is social transformation or social change. And feminist research aims to create awareness about hierarchy, about subjugation, of marginalization, of women's invisibility in social processes, thereby committing to change the situation. So if we think about the basic dimensions or goals of feminist research, then it actually reflects a critical understanding of research in two terms. That is, one is research as academic pursuit, and secondly, research as practice. This is a very important starting point of feminist research, the boundaries of academic pursuit and practice, and how these two boundaries are actually negotiated. Next slides.
The next slide, please.
That is you. Feminist research, when we talk about feminist research, we would like to begin with how it is guided. As we know that research is guided by methodological positions, by epistemological positions, and then comes the question of method. Choosing or selecting a method is actually mediated by the methodological and epistemological positions. In that sense, feminist research is guided mostly by feminist theories. Of course, taking into account the social theories in general, but feminist theories actually contribute the most in understanding the very scope of feminist research methods. Now, in short, the feminist theories are addressing, or they are mostly addressing the critique, addressing to the critique of classical social theories. How, as broadly androcentric in nature, cutting across the inherent divisions within the feminist schools. They believe that there are implicit masculinist assumptions in classical social theories, privileging male positions or male perspectives. So, how social researchers have been guided by these male perspectives, ignoring or marginalizing or silencing women's voices, experiences, women's perspectives, and how women have been defined as the other to male norms of scientific or objective cultures. Now, here I would like to mention a very interesting quote from Simone de Beauvoir, her very famous book, The Second Sex. She writes, humanity is male and man defines woman not in herself, but as relative to him. He is the subject, she is the other. So feminist research actually takes into cognizance this othering of woman in classical social theories and challenges it in its criticism of positivism, in its criticism of blatant empiricism. So they may broadly term it as the male stream research method. Mainstream research methods or mainstream research space is male stream research. And in that argument, feminist scholars, as I have already mentioned, they have undertaken different epistemological and methodological positions. It's not about one perspective or one approach, but it's about different theoretical positions the feminists have undertaken. And the feminist research process reflects these different theoretical positions in identifying the method, in identifying the methodological positioning. So it's actually integrally linked to the these epistemological and methodological positions. Now, the second important point I would like to mention about feminist research, and one important challenge that's related to feminist research, is feminists' commitment to political engagement or the issue of power. This is what makes feminist research very important, unique, or different from so-called mainstream researches. Feminist research actually involves both theory and practice, what we broadly term as feminist praxis, to produce knowledge useful to change the society. So, reflecting on the scope of social change, to talk about power and challenge the power relations that produce inequality, oppressive structures, values in society. So, feminist research is inherently having an emancipatory potential, and both in terms of its academic scope and in terms of its practical concerns. So, when we talk about feminist research, the scholars argue that it should be having concerns, it should have concerns about academic goals along with certain political objectives, political goals of change being the one of the important criteria or one of the important aims of feminist research. Next slides, please. Now I would like to talk about, with this reference of discussion, I talk about some of the tension zones in feminist research. When we talk about feminist research, when we adopt feminist research method, we are actually being influenced by some of these tensions, some of the debates in feminist. There are many others, but I have chosen to talk about some core tension zones. The first one is adding women as feminist analysis. Now, we know that traditional feminist scholars and traditional feminist analysis have sought to add women into the mainstream social researches as feminist perspective, the broad dominant feminist perspective. The early feminist scholars, they have done that. But this talked about locating women's role in public life, which was dominantly understood as male space, and restoring women's visibility from the margins. Uh, it had these traditional assumptions. It started with, and it worked a lot on traditional assumptions of women as victims. So trying to understand, locate the spaces of victimization or victimhood, and to restore women's positions in terms of the invisible spaces in public life. However, we know that subsequently it extended to the argument that women are not the passive victims of inequality or suppression, but they are also having active agency in resistance. So later, in terms of adding women, the feminist researchers have focused on women's agencies. In academic spaces, they talked about how women scholars have resisted in the male's space of academic domains, in the universities, in the research areas, and how they have tried to collate women's scholars' writings. Women's study research centers have been growing up with trying to restoring women's visibility in different spaces, and how we talk about, for example, how we talk about placing gender as a very important issue for textbooks, for basic social science study and science courses. So this is one important issue. But at the same time, there is a problem of framework. There is a danger, actually, of appropriating or endorsing dominant androcentric standards of public life in this process of fitting women into it. So the later feminist scholars have argued that the point is not to add women, but the point is to challenge, the question, the maleness of the public life. So I think I can give one example that when we talk about women's political representation, we research on women's political representation through reservation. We find how patriarchal norms are being enmeshed into this discussion of adding women into the political public space. Just it raises a very important debate in that. So adding women have some this framework has some problematic spaces. The second important tension zones in feminist research, not in feminist research methods, but I would say in feminism itself, is the question of diversity and recognition of difference. Feminist scholars are becoming more and more vocal about sensitivity about women's plural experiences or identities, women's varied experiences in terms of class, caste, race, religion, etc. So identity politics is becoming important in feminism, in feminist movement, and in feminist research method. It has serious implications, having some very critical, putting some very critical challenges. So instead of homogenizing women's experiences, feminist research need to explore the inherent multiple plural varieties of experiences. So one may say that challenges for researcher would be not to talk for women, not to talk about women, but for which women, how to talk about. So this become important. like I just would like to give one example from India, that Dalit feminist scholars are articulating their strong reservations about insensitivity of mainstream feminist movement to their causes, to their experiences, to their languages. If you go through, I'm as a gender and media researcher, I find Facebook's, Instagram, Dalit women's Instagram pages are flooded with examples of their dissent, of their this kind of a denial, of a subtle exclusion of diversity. And I think you all know about Bell Hooks, Gloria Watkins, who who used to write her pen name into small case letters to just to focus attention on the message rather than herself. And she was a very vocal, prolific advocate of Black feminism. So this is one very important issue, diversity and difference, that should be incorporated into the scope of feminist research methods. And lastly, the most important area, I think, is the role of researcher. Since the feminist research pursues certain goals, certain evident goals, so there comes the question of the self, the role of researcher as the self. And so it challenges the objective, the dissociated role of researcher as primarily embodied in positivistic and scientific empiricist inquiry. It talks about more of a personal inclusion, the question of self. That is important. Feminist researchers are increasingly using I instead of the author, the researcher, etc. So introducing subjectivity in research as against objectivism, and there's this recognition of self prioritizes certain specific methods over others. For example, conversational methods. For example, autoethnography. If possible, if I get time, I will be, I may discuss a little bit about this also. And secondly, in this role of researcher, another important point is feminist research actually demands the challenging the traditional hierarchical relationship between the researcher and the researched. That they argue in the importance of non-exploitative connectedness in research, empathy instead of expert knowledge, and by that how to listen to the silenced voices, marginal voices. So this is a very important challenge in feminist research, to negotiate with the self in the research process. Next slide, please. Now, with these references, I would like to come back to the debates on methods. The very important one, the most significant one, is the paradigm debate. We talk about the binary of quantitative and qualitative debate. Actually, we know that many of the scholars, they have argued that feminist research is essentially qualitative in nature. But we know that there are this negotiation is a very important subject matter of feminist research method. How to come out of this binary of public, private, rational, intuitive, objective, subjective. And these are sourced from ideological, methodological positions. So qualitative analysis and methods are more popular in feminist researches, but quantitative methods are actually supplementing the qualitative methods in understanding the differences, the sameness, these issues. So qualitative method is more flexible in nature. It gives allowance to multiple views, plurality of experiences, and also a transdisciplinarity that's going beyond stricter disciplinary borders to incorporate from different sources its narrative, interpretative, and been discussed in the introductory lecture, the very important cultural context. Qualitative analysis allows to address this cultural context more skillfully. But as I said, the contemporary feminist scholars are talking about these quantitative methods, quantitative techniques to increase the verifiability of researches. But the most important thing is the perspective. That is important than this kind of a dichotomy. Now, the second one is the second important debate is question about this passionate personal knowledge. Since feminist scholars, they are focusing on personal passionate knowledge in the research versus the validity and reliability of data. Now, the feminist research has challenged the value freedom of traditional researchers without rejecting the empiricist goals of organized knowledge. Many criticism have been there that the personal account the feminists are talking of may not be adaptive to broader generalizations. But what they say, the feminist researchers argue that that women generally share a familial embeddedness in women's experiences as women, despite their diverse socio-cultural economic context. Like Sandra Harding argued that women's personal experience is a more complete and less distorting kind of social experience, and thus it is a significant indicator of reality. So one challenge is to understand this passionate knowledge in terms as against vis-a-vis the objective empiricist knowledge. And here comes the question of sampling, because feminist researchers focus on microsampling has been definitely challenged by many social researchers as absence of generalization, scope of generalizations, and particularly not problematic in terms of public policy. And in that sense, feminist researchers are broadly adopting these multi-method researches, the triangulation of methods, mixed method researches. These are becoming more popular to address this kind of criticisms or debates. Next slides, please. So with this basic core issues in feminist research debates, the critical areas, I would just like to browse very fast on different methods that have been used in social science researches that are also used in feminist researches, but with a different perspective, feminist perspective. So the popularity of conversational methods, life history methods, document analysis, field and ethnographic research in participant observation, feminist action researches, and critical discourse analysis. So reformulating the focus, strategy, power relationship in the traditional methods, that actually implies the unique perspective of feminism. So it's more participatory in nature, it would be more in-depth investigation, exploratory and self-reflexive in nature. Next slides, please. That is true also for adopting quantitative methods. So how feminists have mended quantitative methods in their perspectives or in incorporating their perspectives. So of late, these quantitative case studies, survey, these are very important popular ones. With the use of technology and statistical modeling, we may find different newer variants of quantitative methods in feminist perspective. One is latent variable mixture modeling, which is a hybrid model that focuses on large population with varieties, diverse subpopulation, and statistical modeling on that, so that one can arrive at general conclusions or general assumptions with individual experiences of subpopulation. the next slides. I would like to finish my discussion with these two quotes. And I think as Dr. Ferdinando has talked about critical realism, talked about the importance of structures and agency, the culture as an important context. So feminist research methods, feminist research itself and its inherent methods are undergoing serious transformation over the years. And two important, I may sum up this whole discussion with these two. One is Clara Greed, who talked about that. So I am studying a world of which I myself am part, with all the emotional involvement and accusations of subjectivity that this creates. I do not attempt to keep my surveyors at arm's length and do research on them as my subjects whilst maintaining a dominant position, as is common in much traditional objective research. So this is talking about what we have already we have so far discussed about passionate knowledge, about personal knowledge. And the second one is by Liz Kelly, that talks about this negotiation between the quantitative and qualitative ones, that rather than assert with primacy of any method, we are not working with a flexible position. Our choices of method or methods depends on the topic and scale of the study in question. Whenever possible, we would combine and compare methods in order to discover the limitations and possibilities of each. So with this, I like to finish my discussion that what are the broad challenges in feminist researches. I hope I have been able to mention the basic core points. There are many other arguments I would have liked to include if time permitted. Thank you all.
Thank you. Am I audible? Thank you, ma'am, for your brilliant presentation. And I would like to request the participants, if you have any question, you can kindly type in the chat box. In the meantime, I have a query. So with your permission, ma'am, I would like to share. Ma'am, could you please enlighten us in regard of fourth wave of feminism? So where what we have seen, like the stalwarts, they are giving emphasis on gender neutrality. So how would you highlight this particular point, and what is your argument in this regard? Thank you.
Shall I answer one or individually, or take up all the questions?
Ma'am, I'll see that if there any other question in the chat box, then ma'am, you can answer all the questions together. So just
I
give me
think
1 minute.
there is one question from Ashok Nath. He writes, so far I have understood that your research topic is purely gender-based. I have one important query regarding I can't see the whole message actually. Can you just...
Just a second, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
You. So the technical team, can you help me to find out that message, please?
Yeah, in the meantime, I go on answering your query.
Yes.
Let me check the chat box later. Yes, as I think because of the short time, I have not dealt upon the different epistemological positions within feminism as a movement, but actually I situated my discussion on some very broad and core assumptions common to the feminist scholars. And definitely, as I mentioned, that adding woman to adding gender was one important transition in at least from late 1960s, 70s. That was one important transition in feminist researches. And post-feminism actually definitely is talking about gender neutrality. But the one important thing is meant to mention here is that in this sense, gender neutrality actually, as I mentioned, that these epistemological theoretical positions are mediating the choice or selection of methods. I would like to mention one important thing is that autoethnography, I have just mentioned this, and autoethnography actually talks about the different experiences of individuals beyond their gender identity. So the question came in the issue came whether the male cannot be a good feminist researcher. So that actually the post-feminist researchers tried to address this issue, and individuals' experiences not simply as women or as in terms of a gender identity, but more in terms of an individual, that is becoming important in you can see it in terms of autobiographical, the more popularity of autobiographical researches in. And I also find it's very important connections in the intersectional researches, and particularly in India you find some of the marginalized communities, women or gendered third gender communities, they are taking up these issues together to uh, share their experiences, not simply as individual or simply as their gendered lives, but their own experiences as individual. But I think this cutting across the differences to gender neutrality is an important point, is an important challenge to achieve in the feminist research method till today.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We have three questions, but due to the paucity of time, we will be taking two questions. And whatever the questions are coming, so we will be mailing those questions to our respected speakers, and they will clarify your doubts. I'm addressing to the participants according to their convenience. So the second question, what we have, I'm reading that question for you, ma'am. Uh, it's from S. Janaki. Good evening, madam. If research is on quantitative one, can we say it will be qualitative? By S. Janaki. This is the second question. Shall I repeat it, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the question is, if research is on quantitative one, can we say it will be qualitative?
Definitely not. I think if you talk about quantitative methods, you are using certain quantitative techniques, then it can't be a qualitative, essentially a qualitative one. But you can, I think you may be confusing it in terms of two words. One is method and another is analysis. With quantitative method, you can definitely reach to qualitative analysis, but quantitative method itself is not equal to qualitative methods.
Thank you, ma'am. The other question is from Shreyashi Chaudhary. What are the problems confronted feminist researchers in this pandemic era?
Uh, yes, I have not worked much upon this. Now, I think I am slowly getting into it. I am just giving you one example that since I'm interested to work more on gender and media. So I find that this is a very interesting issue that come up in the social media spaces, and feminists the organizations, the scholars, the activists, they are utilizing the very scope of social media in this pandemic situation, where you are endorsing or enforcing actually the physical disconnectedness in doing any kind of work, not simply researches. And one example I can give you that how the Instagram pages in the Facebook's Instagram pages. I think you must have seen that the anti-CAA protests. These have their sit-in protests in different parts of the different parts of India in different cities. Now, once this after this pandemic, they have moved on to the digital space, and they are utilizing the very scope of digital technology to continue their protest. So these are the challenges, how to overcome the physical connectedness and to be physical disconnectedness and to be socially connected even after that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation. Uh, we are really sorry because due to the paucity of time, we won't be able to take more questions, but we will be sending these questions to our respected speaker via mail, and she will give answers or will clarify your doubts as per her convenience. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Kaveri Chakraborty, and thank you all of you who raised questions, and hope all of you enjoyed the session. So now we will be going to have our second session, and in this session we have Dr. Srijani Bhattacharjee as our speaker. I feel privileged to introduce Dr. Srijani. Dr. Srijani Bhattacharjee is a research fellow at the Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, Kolkata. She has done her MPhil and PhD from Center for Historical Studies, JNU, New Delhi. She has several publications to her credit. Some of her articles are published in Journal from Sage. She has a chapter in an edited book from Taylor and Francis and journal from Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla. Her research area concentrates on the colonial and post-colonial environmental history of Northeast India, human nature interfaces among the tribes in Mizoram, Meghalaya, and Arunachal Pradesh. Before joining Makayas, Kolkata, she was assistant professor of history at Adamas University, Kolkata. She was also engaged with the Asiatic Society as research fellow. So, Dr. Bhattacharjee, welcome to this session, and please enlighten us with your lecture, and hope we will enjoy and we will surely be enriched with your talk. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tinni Goswami. First of all, I would like to convey my thanks to the Department of History, St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, Raghabpur branch, Kolkata, and other organizers of this 5-day online international faculty development program for giving me this opportunity to present a paper here. The topic on which I shall be speaking today is dimensions of environmental history in Northeast India. Shrimanti, can you start with the PPT?
I request our technical team to start the PPT on behalf of Dr. Bhattacharjee, please. Thank you.
Okay, so the topic on which I shall be speaking today is dimensions of environmental history in Northeast India. But before I go into the details of the topic, I'd like to give a brief understanding about what environmental history is all about. How did this field of inquiry come into being? What are the approaches to the study of environmental history? Next slide, please. Now, environmental history is that branch of study that focuses on human interaction with the natural world from historical perspective. Now, since time immemorial, we know that nature has played a vital role in shaping human culture and civilization. Similarly, man has also played a vital role in shaping and altering the natural environment. So this field of historical inquiry, it emphasizes on the active role played by nature in influencing human affairs and vice versa. Environmental history is a multidisciplinary subject. I'll go into the details of this aspect in my later slides. And since it is a multidisciplinary subject, it draws widely from social sciences, economics and management, commerce and management, and natural sciences also. Next slide, please. Now, why this field of inquiry came into being? Environmental history is actually, it is a reaction. This genre of historical writing emerged as a reaction to worldwide environmental problems like pollution of water, air, deforestation, depletion of ozone layers, and diminution of flora and fauna. So when these natural changes started coming up, the historians also tried to understand the changes from historical perspective, and thus we find the emergence of environmental history as a historical inquiry, as a branch of historical inquiry. Environmental history, it takes within its fold conservation issues like protection of the natural environment, safeguarding the flora and fauna, and human-nature relationship. It also includes aspects like physical impact of human beings on Earth, its resources, water, and biosphere. Now, environmental history takes into account the consequences produced by increasing population. And with increasing population, there has been increasing consumption of natural resources. What was the impact of such increasing consumption of natural resources on nature? And the implementation of scientific forestry programs or practices over nature and its commercial utilization. Now, here I would like to clarify, like, what is scientific forestry all about? Scientific forestry is actually a German concept that focuses on use, utilization, exploitation, and manipulation of nature in order to generate economic returns from it with the application of scientific principles. So this is the basic idea of scientific forestry. It is a German concept, and we find that this concept was adapted by European powers in their colonies in order to establish control over the indigenous forest resources of the colonies, in order to commercially exploit the natural resources of their colony. So environmental history deals with these aspects. Now here I'd like to give you a brief understanding, like what is the historical background of environmental history, like why this field of inquiry came into being. Now, after the Industrial Revolution in England, we find large-scale industrialization, urbanization, and consequent to large-scale industrialization and urbanization, we find that there was rise in pollution level, there was rise in air, water, and noise pollution. So as a result, we find that due to this natural changes in the natural environment, we find some consciousness emerging among the people of the country. Like they tried to find out like what is the reason, and certainly these changes were not positive in character, they were negative in character. So therefore we find that by the 1870s, we find environmental movements coming up in England against large-scale industrialization and urbanization, and large-scale pollution also. Then during the 1920s, we find the emergence of the Annales School of History writing in France. Annales School emphasizes on total history, that is whatever is connected with mankind has to be the subject matter or can be the subject matter of history writing. So since natural environment is an intimate part of human civilization and human culture, so therefore the interrelationship between human and nature was studied from historical perspective in annal school. By the later years or second half of the 20th century, we find that movements coming up in America. By the 1960s and 70s, we find movements coming up in America against large-scale industrialization, urbanization, deforestation, rising pollution level. To be more specific, there were more movements on the release of toxic waste by industries in the forms of batteries, in the forms of machines, in the form of pesticides and computer equipments. So as a result of all these factors, a consciousness or an awareness started emerging in the minds of social scientists also, and the historians took up this field of inquiry, wanted to, or they started understanding the problems from historical perspective, and thus we find the emergence of this field of study. Next slide, please. Now, approaches to environmental history. Researches in environmental history. First, it is the study of human involvement with nature. As I have told already, it is the study of human involvement with nature. Then environmental history focuses on the economic and technological side of human actions. As we have talked about scientific forestry practices, I have told about scientific forestry practices, that is the nature, how to exploit nature in order to generate economic returns from it. Since generation of revenue formed a vital part of scientific forestry practices, and scientific forestry practices are an integral part of environmental history. Therefore, it is essentially an economic history, that is how much forest revenue has been generated, whether there was rise or decline in revenue from a certain area, what species should be planted in order to generate more revenue, etc. So from this perspective, we can say that it is essentially an economic history. And since it talks about application of scientific principles, it talks about application of botanical principles, it talks about application of zoological and geological principles. Apart from this, other principles like working plans, like how forests should be worked in order to generate economic returns, silvicultural practices, horticultural practices, establishment of plantations. So these aspects also form an essential part of environmental history. Therefore, it can be considered as technological history also. Environmental history focuses on the impact of colonization and associated efforts of industrialization over natural resources, the role of humans in altering the natural environment around the world. And along with this concept, that is, what was the impact of colonization over natural resources? Just connected with it is another aspect, that how it marginalized the indigenous forest rights of the people, how the implementation of colonial forest policies hampered the indigenous forest rights of the people. So, since this indigenous aspect is also an important part of the study, and for understanding this indigenous aspect, one has to know about indigenous methods of forest management, indigenous forest knowledge, indigenous methods of forest preservation. Therefore, a knowledge about the cultural, social, and religious and ethnic aspect, along with economic and political aspects of a certain community, is vital. From this perspective, it is a cultural history also. And since it talks about environmental concepts, just now we have spoken about scientific forestry, it speaks about various indigenous concepts also, concepts related to forest management. Therefore, it can be considered as an intellectual history also. And since in environmental history, we take the help of history, we take the help of economics, we take the help of cultural, religious, and social studies, we take the help of commercial management, and we take the help of scientific principles and botanical, zoological, and geological principles also. From this perspective, it is a multidisciplinary study. Next slide, please. Now, environmental history is another aspect is political history. Environmental history is also a political history because application of forest administration or control over a certain forest area is not possible without application of political administration. So therefore, from this perspective, it is a political history also. And since it talks about laws, regulations, and legislations regarding flora and fauna, therefore it is a study on policy making as well. On policies also, it is a study connected with policies also. Therefore, a person undertaking a research in environmental history necessarily need not be a historian. He may be a geographer, he or she may be a geographer, an ecologist, a sociologist, an anthropologist, because the subject has so many dimensions. The subject matter of environmental history is often the same of historical geography or historical ecology, although the choice of sources might vary. Now, in historical ecology, actually historical ecology may be defined as a research program that focuses on interactions between humans and their natural environment over a longer period of time. And in historical ecology, paleoecology, archaeological investigation, studies on land use pattern, sources of ecological and geographical researches are undertaken. These are the types of sources which are usually consulted in the case of historical ecology. But in the case of environmental history, the type of sources consulted are different. In environmental history, we take the help of primary sources that consist of archaeological sources, government documents, old newspapers, diaries, letters, journals, magazines, souvenirs, then works by administrators, officials, works by indigenous people. When we study about indigenous forest knowledge, we take the help of oral literature. It may be written literature, and oral literature are also of great help for the communities who did not have written literature earlier. So we find that taking the help of folk traditions and legends can be of great help. Then visual sources can be of great help in environmental history, and environmental history often deals with contemporary issues also. It also deals with aspects which are not very old. So what we find that for understanding those topics or for researching those areas of environmental history, interviewing can be of great help. So since environmental history studies human and flora-fauna relations, therefore, growth of zoological parks, game sanctuaries, exploration of new animal and plant species, and establishment of botanical gardens, etc., are included within this fold of study. Next slide, please. Now, environmental history may be regional or global in character. In regional environmental history, usually the regional issues connected with the natural environment are described, discussed, and analyzed. And regional environmental history may be a part of regional history also, that focuses on specificities and commonness of a certain region that distinguishes the region from the other. But in global environmental history, usually the global environmental problems and changes are researched on, like like rise in climate change, then sea level rise, then large scale deforestation, urban air pollution, impact of global population growth on nature, etc. These can be subject matter of global environmental history. Then we find that forming knowledge about regional environmental history is comparatively easier compared to global environmental history, because in global environmental history one has to deal with global problems, and for understanding those problems, the sources which are to be consulted in the case of global environmental histories are documents, visual materials, and other sources that focus on trade, exploration, climate change, cultural exchange, and global commodities in world history. But in regional environmental history, the sources which I have mentioned just now, those are to be consulted. So we find the variations in consultation of sources between global and environmental regional environmental history. Next slide, please. Now I come to Northeast India. That is, we know that the easternmost part of India is known as Northeast India, and that comprises of 8 states of the region, and the 8 states are Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur, Tripura, Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, and Sikkim. So these are the 8 states of Northeast India. The entire region is habited of various communities having different cultures, ethnic, social norms, and religions. The entire region is also geographically varied, because the region consists of both plains and hills. The Brahmaputra Valley is a plains region, but the surrounding hill states are primarily hill regions. So we find that there are geographical and topographical variations, and there are demographic variations as well. So since the region is varied in demography, therefore we find diverse traditions of indigenous forest use and management in the region. Now here I would like to give you a brief understanding about the history of the region. The region became a part of Assam after the First Anglo-Burmese War under the clauses of the Treaty of Yandabu in 1826. So during this period, the entire region, excepting the princely states of Manipur and Tripura, was known as Assam. Only the states of Manipur and Tripura were not within Assam. Apart from that, the other parts of the area was known as Assam. And Sikkim was included in the list very recently. Therefore, Sikkim was also not a part of the region. So the hill states surrounding the Brahmaputra plains, or the Assam Valley, or the plains of Assam, those were districts, hill districts within Assam under the British administration. And prior to the coming of the British, the Assam Valley region was ruled by the Ahom rulers, who had ruled the region from 13th century till the initiation of the British administration over the region. And the hill areas were either some conglomeration of chieftainships or monarchies. They were collection of chieftainship or monarchies, or other forms of political administration. So such was the situation prior to the coming of the British. Here in this next slide, please. Next slide. So here in this map, you can see that Khasi Hills, you can see the map. Manipur and Tripura, these were not parts of Assam, and Khasi Hills was a collection of monarchical units. Similarly, Jaintia Hills was also a collection of monarchical units. So under the British, we find that the Khasi, Jaintia, and the Garo tribes, which are matrilineal tribes, the areas inhabited by these 3 matrilineal tribes was converted into a district, that is United Khasi and Jaintia Hills, and it was a district under the British administration of Assam. Next slide, please. So this is the map of present-day Northeast India, where you can find the 8 states which I have mentioned. Now, dimensions. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So dimensions of environmental history in Northeast India. So environmental history in Northeast India analyzes the impact of British administration and colonialism over the natural resources of the province. It mainly deals with various strategies and political British forest administration in the region that have resulted in the establishment of colonial control over the natural resources of the province and carving of indigenous forest rights in the region. So these 2 aspects of environmental history related to Northeast India is more or less similar with other part of the country. But despite such commonness, we find that the environmental history of Northeast India has some specificities also, because the type of forest administration applied in the hills and the plains district of the region was not similar. Next slide. Now, we find that in the plains of Assam, we find that there was direct administration of British Forest Department, where there was reservation of forest areas, that is, forest areas were demarcated as reserves. But in the hill areas, we find that the political administration was handled by the political officers, who also supervised the management of the forest, but they did not intrude into the did not include into the indigenous methods of forest management in the area. So they did not introduce.
I have a request to the participants. Kindly mute your mic. Sorry, Dr. Srijani Bhattacharjee. You please continue.
Okay. So we find that in the case of hill areas of Assam, we find that the British government preferred lesser interference. Therefore, they did not interfere much in the internal administration of the tribes. Although there were reservation of some forest areas, like the riverine areas were mostly reserved in order to curb shifting cultivation or on climatic grounds. So since the British administration related to the area, it preferred lesser interference. It tried to develop knowledge about the cultural traditions, social, ethnic, and religious traditions, or the economic and political aspect connected with indigenous methods of forest administration. And for doing that, one has to have, as I have told earlier also, one has to have a knowledge about the cultural, social, ethnic, and all the other aspects of a certain community. So from this perspective, it can be said that it is also a holistic history, because for understanding such specificities, a brief idea about the social, religious, and cultural aspects of the communities, along with their economic and political structure, is required. Then it is a study on policy making also, because the subject or this genre of historical study, it deals with forest, faunal, and mineral policies and legislations implemented in the region. Like we find that in the case of Assam, we find that though the Forest Act of 1864 and the Forest Act of 1878 were implemented, but considering the specificities of the regional specificities, we find that the Assam Forest Regulation of 1891 was implemented over the region, which was not implemented elsewhere. And the environmental history of the region certainly deals with various provisions of the Assam Forest Regulation implemented over the region, because Assam was a vast region, as I have said. So from this perspective, it is a study on policy making. Next slide, please. Now, since Northeast India is rich in mineral resources like petroleum, coal, etc., along with many other types of mineral resources, therefore, the environmental history of the region can be a history on the mineral resources of the region too. Like it can trace exploitation, commercialization, management, and administration of mineral resources found in the area. Then it can deal with aspects like establishment of wildlife sanctuaries and national parks in the region. So from this perspective, it deals with certain zoological aspects as well. Then we find that floral varieties from Assam were taken to England for botanical experiments. Similarly, species from England were brought to Assam in order to see if those plant species could thrive in the climatic conditions of the region. So such history of such aspects can be the subject matter of environmental history. And we know that environmental history is essentially an economic history of any region. And in the case of Northeast India also, it is an economic history because it deals with revenue administration. It deals with plantation economy, because when we talk about Assam, we cannot ignore tea. So when tea plants were discovered in the region, during that period, we find that the tea planters, they emerged as the largest proprietors of forest lands in Assam. So later, when we find the British Forest Department, because Forest Department was established in the region by the later part of the 19th century. So when Forest Department was established in the region, it developed some kind of clashes because the tea planters were not in favor of forest reserves. So such kind of things can be interesting areas of environmental history, and works have been done on this. And revenue administration, like since Assam was a very vast area with a scanty population, therefore we find that large areas were lying unoccupied and unused, which the British termed as wastelands. So in order to convert these wastelands into cultivable areas or agricultural fields, we find that under the encouragement of the British government, we find that there was large-scale immigration of East Bengal peasants in the area in the first half of the 20th century, from late 19th to early, first half of the 20th century. So there was large-scale changes as a result of all this. So these can be subject matters, and these are certainly parts of economic history. The coming of railways in the region, with the coming of railways in the region, there was rise in tea production, there was rise in trade in forest products. So these areas are important subject matter or dimensions of environmental history in Northeast India. Now, next slide, please. Next slide. So, environmental history of the region is largely a scientific and technological history of the territory. So, can you go to the previous slide? Because I think, yes. So environmental history of the region is largely a scientific and technological history of the region. As I have said already, that it includes within its study application of botanical ideas over a certain forest areas, zoological ideas over faunal species, and geological applications. So we find applications of scientific concepts like working plants, silviculture, sowing of new plant species, plantations, etc. So from this perspective, it is a scientific history also. And since it talks about indigenous forest management, it talks about indigenous nature-based practices, beliefs, and nature management and preservation mechanisms. Therefore, it is a community study also. It is a community study also. So you can see that there are many dimensions of the subject, and we find that at present researchers are coming up on the role of rivers in the growth of human cultures and settlements in the region. We find Arupjati Saitya has worked on it. He has written a book named The Unquiet River, a biography of the Brahmaputra. So we find such works coming up, and further works on the role of rivers in the formation of human culture and civilization can be undertaken. Then we find that, thus we find that the sphere of inquiry is an amalgamation of cultural, social, political, and anthropological studies and history combined with natural, zoological, and geological sciences. So next slide, please. So the role of women in forest use, management, and preservation of biodiversity from historical perspective can be an important area of inquiry, because for example, in Arunachal Pradesh, we find that women play an important role in preservation of nature. The indigenous medicinal practitioners in Arunachal Pradesh, there are many women who are experts in indigenous medicine. So therefore, work on historical aspect of this area can be undertaken. And since environmental history, and another dimension I would like to mention here, that agro-medical research on indigenous medicinal practices from historical perspective can be also undertaken under this genre of historical inquiry. Now, it is also an intellectual history of the region, because it includes within its fold both indigenous and colonial concepts related to nature use, exploitation, and management. At present, the researches on environmental history in Northeast India is not only confined to colonial era. Works on pre-colonial era has also been undertaken, like the types of forest administration applied by the Ahom rulers. Works have been undertaken on this. Then disaster history can be an integral part of analysis pertaining to the region. Like I can say that Northeast India is prone to disasters like landslides, earthquakes, and floods. What had been the role of these disasters in shaping human culture and civilization in the area can be an important arena of historical research on Northeast India. So this is one. And next slide, please. Now, researches are undertaken in the post-colonial era also. Researchers on post-colonial era deal with climatic changes, large-scale deforestation, impact of modern development, and rise in population on the natural resources of the region. Researchers can be worked on these areas. Some works have come up, like we find that historical work has come up on the question like why rainfall has decreased in Cherrapunji. Previously, Cherrapunji was considered as the wettest place on earth. Now the title of wettest place has been given to Mawsyndram. What are the historical factors that led to the decrease of the volume of rainfall in Cherrapunji? Works have come up on this. Again, I would say that policy making in the post-colonial era can be an important area of study on environmental history in the region, and creation of urban spaces, how the natural environment have been changed and manipulated in order to create urban spaces. So these kind of works can be undertaken in environmental history. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Srijani, for your informative and analytical presentation. And we have some questions for you. So the first question I would like to take from Sadanand Pandit. I'm reading it for you as it might be an observation. Let's see. As we know that tribal people have contributed a lot in the protection and conservation of the environment and natural resources, even the government has accepted this by enacting the Forest Right Act 2006, whereby their rights are recognized. Once their right is recognized, can it be questioned by the court?
Now, in the case of Northeast India, we find that maximum forest rights have been given to the indigenous communities. I am talking about the hill areas, because in hill areas we find that 90% of the forest are indigenous forest or forest under indigenous control, and only 10% forests are under state control. So in the case of Northeast India, the picture is different. But yes, certainly it can be questioned. Like in 1996, we find that the Supreme Court had imposed a ban on timber cutting in Arunachal Pradesh along with other parts of Northeast India, because there was rampant felling of timber and exploitation of natural resources. And we find that the Supreme Court had imposed a ban. But later the ban was removed, because in Northeast India, most of the communities, they depend on forests for their livelihood. So such kind of ban was interfering with the livelihood of the people, and there were protests also against the ban. So later an organization, forest, I think Arunachal Pradesh Development Corporation, a body by this name was formed in order to keep a vigil over the indigenous forest management, forest exploitation of the area. So this was one of the the ban imposed by Supreme Court, but later it was removed. But in the case of Northeast India, we find that preference has always been given to the people, and the state government hardly can interfere in that, because the state government cannot impose their rules and regulations in the indigenous forest, where the orders or the policies of the indigenous authorities are supreme. So thank you.
Thank you. There are two more questions.
Yes.
One from Mr. Sarveswar Shahu. The question is there any connection of Northeast India's natural resources in setting up of Kolkata as their first capital?
In the case of Northeast, like when Kolkata was formed, at that time Northeast India was under indigenous control. The exploitation of forest resources in Northeast India started from the later half of it became more intense in the later half of the 19th century, and in the first half of the 20th century the exploitation increased. The exploitation was more during the First World War, and it increased during the Second World War. So in regard to formation of Kolkata, I do not think there has been any connection, but in the later years, yes, forest resources from Northeast India were used in other areas, because the sal forest found in Assam, those were used for making railway sleepers in various parts of the world. We find that in the post-colonial era, like for example, I can say that the forest of Arunachal Pradesh were exploited to a large extent in order to supply timber for the Asian Games in 1982. So such kind of things we do find after independence and in the first half of the 20th century. So that's it.
Um, I would like to take one last question, and as I have mentioned earlier that we are running shortage of time, and definitely we will be sending those questions which we cannot take here via mail to our respected speaker, and she will be answering your questions or will be clarifying your doubts as well. Please bear with us. So the last question which I would like to take, it's from Aryadeep Roy Chaudhary. His question is, Madam, what is the history of origin of social forestry in India?
Social forestry, what I understand is that the role of society in preservation and management of forest. In the case of Northeast India, such traditions prevailed since time immemorial. But we, in the case of, forest administration or forest policies, we find that such kind of concepts appeared during the early 90s, like the joint forest management came up in West Bengal, first of all. Later on, it was implemented in other parts of Northeast India, where there is a joint collaboration between the indigenous people and the forest department in management and preservation of nature. So such things, such concepts related to preservation of nature are encouraged by the forest department at present, forest administration of India at present. But during the colonial period, we do not find emphasis on such issues. These issues began to be emphasized in the post-colonial period, and JFM is a concept which is applied all over India, and it emphasizes on the joint collaboration between the forest administration and indigenous forest practices, and with the sharing of revenues. Certainly there is some sharing of revenue between the forest administration and the people. So on the basis of that, such kind of things we do find, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And we will be definitely sending the rest of the questions to our respected speaker. Hope our esteemed participants will understand that we have some limitations also. And now I would like to request Dr. Srijani Bhattacharjee to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tinni Goswami. Now I welcome our next speaker, Dr. Tinni Goswami, to present her paper. Dr. Tinni Goswami has done her master's and PhD from Jagannath University, and her thesis has been published in 2011 from New Delhi. She has numerous national and international publications and toured Europe and other European countries to present her research papers. She was a JRF in Indian Council of Historical Research from 2006 to 2008, and a fellow of the Asiatic Society from 2010 to 2013. Dr. Goswami was a UGC Research Associate at Women's Studies Research Center, University of Calcutta from 2013 to 2014. Presently, she is an assistant professor and the HOD of History, St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, Raghabpur campus. She is also working as a part-time faculty of the postgraduate department of Jadavpur University. Her areas of research are history of gender, culture and regional history, history of science, technology and religions, history of public health, and history of education in West Bengal. Now I welcome Dr. Goswami to start with your presentation. Dr. Goswami, please.
Thank you, Dr. Srijani, for introducing me. So I would like to thank my department and also IQAC, and also to all those who are present here. And without the blessings of our Father Principal and Father Vice Principal, we won't be able to have this program. And thanks to all of you, and hope our participants will be surely benefited from this FDP. And we will be trying our level best to help everyone and also to satisfy your academic queries. So my presentation is based on medical history, and the title of my presentation is Situating Various Trends of Interpreting Medical Literature in the Context of Colonial Bengal, a Critical Approach to Deconstruct Social History. It is difficult to define the scope of literature, as it is as vast like an ocean. The term medical literature does not limit our understanding with regard of medical terminologies. Rather, if a literature states something relevant in terms of health and medicine, can be considered as medical literature. I have chosen some of the important vernacular health journals of the colonial period and the other writings for this lecture, or to initiate a specific discourse. There are certain questions in my mind to validate my arguments or the hypothesis. These are such as: how can we reconstruct or deconstruct the social history of colonial Bengal in terms of vernacular health journals? Secondly, what should be the ways or approaches to revisit those days? Here, the research methodology which I have followed is based on certain theories related to the philosophy of history, and I dealt with the facts which are not the mere narrations of the past, as this area is widely explored or exhausted. If I would like to begin with my knowing of the medical history, then we'll definitely quote Collingwood, who once stated, I quote, "Historian is interested in the social customs which they create by their thought as a framework. Within these appetites find satisfaction in ways sanctioned by convention and morality." Unquote. In the history of science and medicine, especially in the sphere of public health, we find various opinions leading to different discourses and debates, emphasizing the intricacies of human minds. How a diseased nation can transform the mindset of the people is very much pertinent if we think of the present COVID-19 situation. Similarly, the health journals of the colonial times in Bengal signified the mental and physical agony of the natives and the colonial apathy of introducing necessary reforms, which indicate towards a state of despair embedded in negativity. It was a situation which did not reflect any hope, and the future was also uncertain. The writings were full of substantial thoughts, as sufferings of the natives were eternal. For example, in her article on malaria in Bengal, Prabhavati Devi Saraswati depicted how the poor people during that time never got escaped from the clutches of the mentioned ailment. In Mitra Prakash, one of the journals which was circulated from Dhaka. An article was published in 1872 on the book review of Kovita Manjuri, a collection of poems by Srimati Basanta Kumari. She was the wife of a landlord and had already earned fame as a poet. During her prolonged illness, she wrote many soulful poems which were later compiled in Kovita Manjuri. From this piece of literature, it is evident that in colonial Bengal, the health services were unsatisfactory, irrespective of the social status of the people. It was a time when not so famous poet Lokkhimoni, in her poem on Bardwan fever, murmured the unsung stories of those who lost their near and dear ones in Bardwan fever, and this poem is soulful as it was based on experiencing the grey shades of life sunk in the reality. Nowadays, most of the researches have an interdisciplinary nature, and from that perspective, it can be said that history of medicine or public health is also an integral component of the investigations on social sciences. Here one can mention about the theory of positivism by Auguste Comte. As we know, Koth emphasized on real life experiences and facts. On the other, through the law of three stages, he stated that to describe the development of social progress, the positive stage or the modern stage is utmost important. Here, we would like to justify the theme of the lecture in the light of Koth's argument. Then it is evident that the presence of perceptible public opinion represents a subjective discourse based on human emotions. On the contrary, history also seeks objectivity or information. The above mentioned literary examples reflect harsh realities and contribute towards the formation of the discourse on public health with an insight of embracing humanist historiography. In my opinion, it is important to expose how the colonial culture propagated a subtle notion of subjugation of the native minds through the tools of knowledge or wisdom. As for example, Edward Said, while discussing the discourse on colonialism, gave emphasis on the imperial interests of the colonizers, where culture played the role of a metaphor. He stated, I quote, I think one of the main flaws in the enormous literature in economics and political science and history about imperialism is that very little attention has been paid to the role of culture in keeping an empire maintained. Now the question is, what is the definition of culture as mentioned by Edward Said? According to Badiruddin Omar, the ruler or the imperialist often makes his own culture as a weapon of domination and concentrates for the betterment of that specific culture. This creates cultural backwardness of the colonized. It can be presumed that, I quote, for the progressive and political movements, cultural backwardness of the people and the lack of critical thinking creates obstacles and the ruling class wants to retain that retardation, unquote. This cultural dominance of the rulers was described by Gramsci as hegemony. We all know that during the colonial times, many journals were published in vernacular and some of them dealt with health-related issues. We have seen what kind of articles these health journals used to publish. Now the question is, who were the readers of the articles on health? If the educated middle class tended to read them, then we can't say these literary efforts were trying to create a massive awareness on public health. In these articles, we have noticed how the authors protested against the government, which were filled with the jargon of nationalism. But very few wrote on mass education, which is the essence of keeping good health. Secondly, perhaps the authors did not highlight the necessity to impose firm legal obligations on people to prevent the epidemics in colonial Bengal. Rather, the appeal to the government was moderate, or the writers spent time on self criticisms. It seems like that most of the articles were an example of exhibiting the scholarly attributions, far away to prove its worth from the colonial standpoint. Very few attempts were noticed to address the commoners, and these literary pieces could never be considered as serious endeavors to grab the attention of the government for initiating preventions. The journals like Tattvabodhini Potrika also published articles on health, but those writings did not reflect any plea for imposing public health acts. In the above mentioned journal, mostly we have seen the writings on Ayurveda or some translations from the English works. As for instance, in 1833 AD, Tattvabodhini Potrika published an article on the dental treatment of the elephants by Atoshi Devi. Another article was published describing the goodness of having fruits. It was printed in the year 1834 AD. Now, I would like to mention the excerpts of three selected articles from the health journal Shastro Samachar and will assess their significance. I begin with an article, namely Banglar Shastro Sangbad by an anonymous author. That means the health news of Bengal, who stated, I quote, "We don't have any system of our own for registering birth and death rates. Therefore, whatever the information we got from the government, we had to rely on it. These information were collected from the rural illiterate policemen or the chowkidars. It is fruitless to argue about the authenticity of these facts." In another article published in the same journal, Dr. M.A. Ansari stated, I quote, "We spend 60% of the total revenue for military expenditures, but it would be futile to invest money for protecting the country when the health of the nation is in a nuisance condition. The best remedy to save the country is to solve the health problems of the population." Unquote. The third article was written by Sri Shrish Chandra Goswami. The title of the article is Ghonta Badhibe Ke, Who Will Bell the Cat? He opined that, I quote, "the spread of the English education has created a distinction between the literate and illiterate that has to be eradicated. Kindness can reduce the feeling of hatred. Villages are the most peaceful places for dwelling, where people get the mental peace or the food for thoughts." The first article which I have chosen criticized the government but did not suggest any solution. The second piece of literature, though mentioned about the health problems of the nation, but how to eradicate those anomalies were not pointed out. In the third article, the author opposed Western education, but He had no answers for how to build a cordial relationship between the literate and illiterate and how the villages could offer food for thoughts. From the above mentioned discussions, one can identify two streams of thoughts or perceptions. Firstly, to highlight the indifference, inefficiency, or the carelessness of the British government in the light of the vernacular writings and the governmental documents reports as mentioned in those pieces of writings. Secondly, the failure of the government to have any kind of reforms or to initiate any kind of reforms due to the opposition and unawareness of the indigenous people. It is rare to find the writings, especially on the government and the people. Number one. Secondly, the communication regarding public health between the colonizers and the colonized. Number two. And thirdly, the probable outcomes if there were any. Now, the question is, what was the reaction of the government after seeing the articles published in the health journals like Chikitshok, Shastro Samachar, Chikitshok o Samalochok, and others? The answer is perhaps not known. Secondly, it is needed to have more researches on the writings of Raja Digambar Mitter, Chunilal Bose, and Acharya Prafulla Chandra Ray, and the other stalwarts of public health in colonial Bengal. It is also important to find out the contributions of the Indian officials of the Public Health Department like Otul Chandra Chatterjee, Baman Das Mukherjee to understand the health situation on the eve of independence. Not only that, what were the ideals of the government on sanitation? Why the reports of the sanitary commissioners were important? How far sanitation and epidemics are related? We are supposed to reconsider all these facts. For this purpose, it is obvious to deconstruct the existing theories on the history of public health in colonial Bengal and understand the social history of colonial Bengal from the lenses of medical literature as words are highly political and the cascade of words is not always anecdotal. The politics of words can decode the social behavior, which is the essence of any kind of historical understanding. Thank you. So, I think I have one question. So, this question is from Aditi Dash. So, I'm just reading it out. I'm very intrigued by this topic. What are some readings that you would suggest regarding medical literature in colonial Bengal to follow up on the same? I mean, any contemporary scholarly works on the same. So, if you would like to have my suggestion, then I would definitely suggest you to go for the primary sources. You try to search for the reports and the official documents on public health. You can get those documents digitally if you go to the digital archives of National Library of Scotland, and also if you search in this space of West Bengal State Archives, then you will be able to get some official documents, the reports of the sanitary commissioners. It's always better to develop your own hypothesis, your own understanding about a particular subject, because the argument of mine is based on this. If you would like to decipher or if you would like to decode the writings, whatever it's written in a in an official report, or in a story, or in a poem which I have mentioned, so you will be able to find out like what happened that time and what were the hidden intentions behind those writings. But if you won't have time for all this, then you can see the books which I think the students or the researchers on public health, they know, like the books by Kobita Ray, Aurobindo Shamanto, Mark Harrison, Sujata Mukherjee, and the writings of Projit Bihari Mukherjee, Sanjay Bhattacharya. I hope these writings will definitely help you to get an idea, but it's always better to go for the primary sources to have your own idea, your own insight. Then you will be able to understand or experience better. Uh, there is one more question. Mm, it's from Meghna Pathak. How far were these medical journals effective in voicing dissent against medical policies of the colonial state? Uh, as I have already mentioned in my paper or my presentation, that these journals, they were basically uh, giving emphasis on self criticisms, because most of the writers, they either they were writing on why the British government failed to perform uh, any effective duty or duties in regard of public health, or they were criticizing the mass because of their unawareness in regard of public health issues. But what your question is like, and according to my understanding, that I have found that these journals were not that much effective to change the colonial mindset of indifference, or the colonial mindset of to not to have that much involved in public health affairs or to initiate reforms. I think I would like to take one last question, and the other question, uh, yes, we would like to answer it, and please mail this question to me. I request the technical team. So there is one question by Shantanu De. What would you consider, would you consider that colonies of the British Empire served as experimental laboratories for the development of colonial medical discourses? Yes, it's a very interesting question, sir. So, in my opinion, like definitely the colonies were a place like where the British, they got an exposure about the natives, about the different diseases, and about the tropical climate, and they got acquainted, or they had a familiarity with the tropical diseases which they never seen, or which they never experienced. So that was definitely made them more aware about the issues related to public health, because they would like to protect or like to save themselves. That's why we saw many acts were initiated by the government just to protect the white men. And if I take the example of how the venereal diseases that time were sporadic, and the first CD acts or the contagious diseases acts were enacted just to protect the white people or the army men. So, but these acts were not that much beneficial for the general public, because those diseases were not that much common for the general public. But when we talk about the epidemics like cholera, malaria, plague, and others, so definitely we find like the British, they did some sanitary reforms for the white colonies or for the white towns where they used to live, but the villages or the native towns or the black cities, like if you refer the book by Shukanta Chaudhuri, Calcutta, the Living City, you will be able to get the references about it. So they were not that much vocal or like that much eager to initiate any kind of reform. And definitely the question which you have raised, like experimental laboratories, yes, because Ronald Ross, he discovered like how the disease malaria originated. His discovery was made in Calcutta. So definitely what I feel like the British officials as well as the medical practitioners, they were getting more exposures about the diseases, about the geographical and the climatic conditions which made the diseases inevitable, about germ theory, about the theory of miasma. But I think here we can take colonial Bengal or India as a case study. But in different colonies, they faced different problems, they experienced different diseases. So it's better to have an entire discourse based on their experiences, like in the colonies of Africa or of Southeast Asia. Thank you. So I will be definitely giving answer to if any other question is there, and I will ask our technical team to mail me if there is any question. Now we would like to begin our fourth session, and our fourth speaker is Dr. Shrabani Chatterjee. I would like to welcome Dr. Shrabani Chatterjee. Dr. Chatterjee, are you here? Please unmute yourself.
I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. So, thank you, ma'am. Dr. Shrabani Chatterjee is currently working as an assistant professor at the Department of Psychology of Bijoy Krishna Girls College, Howrah. She received her PhD from University of Calcutta in 2014. Her field of specialization is medical psychology. She has published papers in different national and international journals and written some chapters in knowledge-based volumes. So, ma'am, I would like to welcome you, and you are the last speaker for day one. And kindly take over the session. And you have 30 minutes for your presentation and 15 minutes for discussion.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be here. And I'd also like to thank all the participants who are here. So I have to share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So the title of my today's presentation is Data Collection Process in the Field of Social Sciences. As the concept data collection is very much related to research, so here actually I'm trying to highlight the basic concept of research at first, and then I'll go to the concept of data collection. So first, research. We are very much acquainted with this term research. It is basically derived from the Middle French word that is called researching. The meaning of the term is to go about seeking. Or we can define the term research in another way also, that it is just the production of two compound words, that is re and search here, or we can say searcher. The meaning is search. So in one sentence, we can say that basically research is a logical and systematic search for new and useful information on a particular topic. So this is a definition. Now, if we define this definition, we will get some characteristics of the research. Now, what are those characteristics? First, Definitely, whenever we are saying about research, it is definitely directed toward the solution of some problem. Okay, and we all know that research is always based on empirical and observable evidence. Now, what we mean by empirical? That means in research, we are definitely dealing with some variable. So whenever we are dealing with some variable, finding out the cause and effect relationships between the variable or controlling the variable, we can able to see its effect. That's why it is called observable or empirical. And it involves precise observation, accurate description of the particular problem which you are taken into your research. Not only that, it also gives emphasis to the development of theories, principles, and generalization. Why we are saying generalization? Because in research, we have to work with the concept of sample, or we have to deal with sample. And whatever the findings we are getting from the sample, we have to infer them to the population. So it is actually nothing but just to generalize the findings of the sample towards the population. Next one, it is characterized by systematic, objective, and logical procedures, and definitely marked by patience, courage, and unhurried activities. And it requires full expertise on the part of researchers. The another important characteristics of research, we can say that it is replicable, so that any person can assess the validity. Now, what is replicability? That means in our social science or in experimental research, we can say that we can able to conduct the research again. So whatever we want, we can able to see. So any person, if one, he can able to see its validity. And the last thing, that is after the completion of research, everybody has to produce a writing of report. So researcher must have the skill to write a particular report considering his research. Now comes to the types of research. First, exploratory research. Exploratory research, actually in this type of research, we do not know the problem, or we can say the solution. Basically, exploratory research we actually use when we have very little or no information about the situation. Then we can use actually the exploratory research. Now comes to the qualitative and quantitative research. As the term depict, we can very easily understand the meaning of the or the differences between two types of researches. That is qualitative. It basically emphasizes the behavior, the intention, the motivation that are responsible behind the concepts. And whenever we are saying about the quantitative research, then we can say that it is totally based on numerical findings, that is the statistical analysis, how to deal with the sample, and how to infer the findings towards the population. So that is the basic difference between qualitative and quantitative research. Now comes to applied and fundamental research. Now, what do we want to mean actually applied research? It is basically a kind of research that is used to answer a specific question that definitely directed at applications towards the world. That means definitely there must be some applicability, and which is related to the environment. Now comes to the fundamental research. Basically, it is conducted to develop new theories. Next comes to the conceptual and empirical research. So whenever we are saying about empirical research, it is very much clear that it definitely depends on observation and experimentation, because without observation and without experimentation, we can't say that we can able to see its effect, or we can able to see the cause and effect relation between the variables. So definitely it is dependent on observation and experimentation. And now comes to the conceptual analysis. Definitely this type of research is very much preferred in social sciences and philosophy. Next one, that is the descriptive and analytical research. Descriptive approach of research, basically based on logic or the statistics of the research analysis. And analytical approach totally concentrate on the process of the final result. That means how we are getting the final result, not about the importance of the result. That means how we are getting what, by analyzing the particular result, whatever we are getting, that is the main approach of analytical research. Last one is the historical research. That is it actually uses the materials like coin, stones, inscriptions, monument, etc. Next one, the two terminologies. That is the research method and research methodology. We are using these two terms simultaneously, but it is not appropriate to use these two terms simultaneously. There are some basic differences between these two terms. One is research method. Whenever we are saying about methods, methods actually indicates the procedure, the schemes, the algorithm that we are used in research, or we can say the theoretical procedure, the experimental studies, numerical analysis, statistical approaches, whatever one actually uses in conducting the research, that is actually the methods. And whenever we are saying about the methodology, it is a systematic way to solve a problem, or in other words we can say that how the research process is conducted, that is actually highlighted by the concept of research methodology. Now comes to today's main presentation, that is data collection. Now data, as we all know that data is basically the plural term, data is the singular. Data collection, whenever we are saying data collection, is basically the process of gathering and measuring information of the variables that we are taken into consideration in our particular research, or the variables of interest we can say. And data can be divided in many ways, like qualitative, quantitative, primary, secondary. So we will highlight those parts. First of all, the qualitative and quantitative. So if we consider the conceptual part, first we will see that whenever we are saying about qualitative data, it is basically concerned with understanding of human behavior and informant's perspective. Now, why informant's perspective is important? Like in psychology, whenever, as you know, that we sometimes we have to deal with clients or with patients. So it is mandatory for us that we always tell the clients to bring the informant with them. Now, what is the importance of informant? Because whatever the qualitative data we are taking from the client, because whatever they are saying about their problem, we always have to check it with the informant's version, that whether they are saying truth or not. On the basis of that, we can interact with the client, or we can able to move with our diagnosis. And quantitative data is basically concerned with discoveries of facts, social phenomena, etc. Not only that, from conceptual point, we can also say that qualitative data is basically assumes a dynamic and negotiated reality, whenever quantitative data actually deals with fixed and measurable reality. Now comes to the methodological part. That means the data collection. Data collection in case of qualitative data, totally based on participant observation and interview. I will explain this process, that is the participant observation and interview later. And in case of quantitative data, it is collected definitely through measuring things. And in qualitative data, data are analyzed on the basis of themes, description from the informants, as I have already mentioned. And in case of quantitative data, data are analyzed on the basis of numerical comparison and statistical inferences. Last, we can say that in case of qualitative data, data are reported on the basis of language of the informant. And in case of quantitative data, it is reported on the basis of statistical analysis. Now, comes to the another types of data, that is the primary data and secondary data. So what do we actually want to mean by primary data? Primary data is basically that has been collected from the first-hand experience, that we can say the primary data. That is, we can say that the validity of primary data is to some extent greater than secondary data. Definitely, there are some advantages and disadvantages of primary data. Investigator collects the data, definitely it must be related to the problem under study. And there is no doubt about the quality of the data collected. And if anybody required, it may be possible to obtain additional data. It is very easy in case of primary data. In case of disadvantage, we can say that there are so many hassles in data collection process, particularly deciding why, what, how, and when to collect the data. And we have to keep in mind the ethical consideration also in case of collecting data through primary process. Now comes to the concept of secondary data. When we are saying secondary data, we have to keep in mind that the source that have already been published, that we can call the secondary data. Secondary data basically includes books, records, biographies, newspapers, public census, etc. Now, there are also some advantages and disadvantages. Hassles become so less than primary data collection, and it is less expensive. And the investigator is not at all responsible for the quality of data as the source has already been published. So it is not the duty of the investigator. Okay, and in case of disadvantages, we can say that definitely data collected in one location may not be suited into another location, and due to some extraneous or environmental factor. And with the passage of time, data becomes obsolete or very old, and special care sometimes is required to modify its use. And secondary data also raises the issues like authenticity, copyright, etc. Now, the data collection methods. I have highlighted some methods like questionnaire, interviews, focus group interviews, observation, survey, and rating skills. So I'll proceed with this. First, questionnaire. Now, questionnaire is basically used to collect factual information from the respondent. That means a particular questionnaire consists of so many questions, and there are response categories, and the work of the respondent is to just put his opinion into the particular category against a particular question. Sir Francis Galton was first invented the concept of questionnaire, but questionnaire is totally different from schedule, opinionaire, and interview guide. Now, first we consider schedule, and where lies the differences between schedule and questionnaire. Whenever we are saying about schedule, we have to keep in mind that schedule is also consisting of so many questions, but here the duty of the investigator is to just ask the answer of the question from the respondent, and he actually feels the answer. So that is the basic differences between the questionnaire and schedule. Now comes to the concept of opinionaire. Opinionaire is basically used in case of measuring attitude, beliefs. Sometimes it is also called attitude scale. Actually, there are so many attitude scale. Okay. Next one is interview guide. Interview guide is actually consists of list of basic points or topics that the interviewer actually want to cover during the interview. Now, whenever we are preparing questionnaire, we have to keep some points for preparing the questions. That is, what are the important points that we have to keep in our mind for preparing the question. First one, the simplicity of the language. The language of the questions must be so simple so that everybody can understand the meaning of the questions. Ambiguous word, vague words, embarrassing questions, leading questions, hypothetical questions should be avoided in preparing questionnaire. And not only that, we should be avoided double negative, because in case of double negative, actually the both end cuts each other, and it creates a lot of confusion on the part of the respondents. Now comes to the sequence of questions. That is, whenever we are showing the questionnaire, what should be the sequence? First, screen. So screen actually used, basically it is a method, it is actually used to find out that whether all the questions are completed or not. Because sometimes in our subject or in any subject, we have found it out that all the questions are not completed. So we have to reject the data because we can't take it. If all the questions are not completed, that means we can't get the proper result. It will create a lots of problem in case of analysis of the questionnaire. Next one is the warm-up. Warm-up actually simply to answer. That means it actually helps us to capture the interest of the respondent into the particular study. Now, transition question. Transition questions are used to make different areas flow well together, because some areas we have to cover in questionnaire. So all areas, so that it can flow in a particular way. For this reason, transitions questions are used. Now comes to skip. So in filling questionnaire, we can find this type of question that, okay, if yes, then answer, otherwise move to the next question. So these are actually called skips. And last one is difficult. Difficult, actually, difficult question, we have to put it at the end of the questionnaire. Now, there are some types of the questionnaires. First two types, that is the fixed response questionnaire and open-end questionnaire. These two types are actually based on the types of questions. That is, the particular type of questions which you are giving. On the basis of that, these two types are actually prepared. One is fixed response questionnaire, another one is open-end questionnaire. So whenever we are saying about, excuse me, fixed response questionnaire, that means there must be some fixed response pattern, and it is the work of the respondent to choose a particular response pattern among them. But in case of the open-end questionnaire is to some extent different. Open-end questionnaire means the responses, the respondent particularly have, they have to give brief or short description of the questions, and it is to some extent lengthier than fixed response questionnaire. Now, the another two types, that is the mail questionnaire and face-to-face administered questionnaire. These two types are totally based on the way of administration of the questionnaire. The first, mail questionnaire. The name actually depicts the meaning of the type. That is, here the work of the interviewer is just to mail the questions along with the way of administration, or we can say the standard method of administration or the instruction. That is how we have to fill the questionnaire. And the next one is face-to-face administered questionnaire. It is a kind of questionnaire where the selected subject are given the particular kind of questions with instruction, and they have to complete it on the with the presence of the investigator or his associates. Now, there are also some advantages and disadvantages of questionnaire. Advantages: first of all, large amount of information within a very short period of time can be collected through questionnaire. Definitely, it is definitely in a cost effective way, and it can be carried out by the researcher or by any number of people. It is not necessary that the researcher have to collect the data. Any number of people, I want to mean that his associate can collect, can administer the questionnaire, and the result of the questionnaire can be usually quickly and easily quantified, and it can be analyzed more scientifically and objectively than other forms of research. Now, where lies the problem? Like, we are all human beings, and our behavior, our emotion, our feelings are all changing from time to time. So sometimes we are actually attributing our feelings, our motivation whenever we are giving the answers of this question. So it is very difficult to avoid the subjective biasness whenever we are taking the answers through questionnaire. Next one, there is no way to telling that how much thought a respondent has put in. And sometimes it also happens that the respondent may be forgetful or not thinking within the full context of the situation. Or sometimes it also happens that different people may understand the meaning of the question differently, which actually creates a lot of problem for the investigator. Now, the next one, that is the interview method. It is very much common to us. We all know that basically conducted between the interviewer and the interviewee. It can be conducted through face-to-face interview situation, through telephonic interview situation, or there are also some other types of interview. So first we will highlight on the face-to-face interview or telephone interview. So face-to-face interview. Face-to-face interview is basically advantageous for some reason. First of all, further probing we can able to done in case of face-to-face interview, and literacy level is not a problem. Non-verbal data can be easily be collected through face-to-face interview through the process of observation, of course, and complex and unknown issues can be explored. In case of telephone interview is to some extent better than, we can say, face-to-face interview. Not only better, is to some extent less expensive, we can say, and it uses less resources. And not only that, it allow clarify question and do not require the literary skill. That means the literary skill, the advantages of literary skill we can get in both, that is the face-to-face interview and telephonic interview also. Now comes to the other types, that is the structured interview, semi-structured interview, and unstructured interview. Now, whenever we are saying about structured interview, as we know, the term depicts, that means it is structured. The first interviewer asks the respondent the same series of questions, and the question definitely predetermined, the question pattern definitely predetermined, and they are asking the question in a formal interview. Okay. Next one is semi-structured interview. Here also, the interviewer and interviewee engaged in a formal interview, but the interviewer here developed the question using an interview guide. That means the list of questions and topic need to be covered during the conversation, usually in an order. We can say self-administering questionnaire is an example of semi-structured interview. The next one is the unstructured interview. Unstructured means the question pattern, the sequence, these are not at all predetermined. Through the process of interview, the interviewer actually develops it. Now, the advantages. In advantages, we can say that interview actually allows greater flexibility in the process of questioning, and it facilitates the investigator in obtaining desired information, and also facilitate the interviewer actually very much sure that the interview have themselves interpreted and answered the question, as they are conducting the interview sometimes in face-to-face situations, so they can easily understand that, okay, the question is very much clear to the interviewee, and he or she can answer the question. Now, the disadvantages, definitely interviewer variability is a very big problem in case of whenever there are more than one interviewer, and sometimes it is very much time consuming process, which creates a lot of problems. Next one is the focus group discussion, or we can say that is the FGD. Focus group discussion is basically an in-depth field method to bring together a small homogeneous group to discuss the topic on a study or agenda. Basically, the group is actually consisting 6 to 12 people, we can say. Sometimes it is more or less, but basically it is consisting 6 to 12 people. There are some steps through which we can conduct the FGD. First, the FGD steps, we have to identify the target market. Okay, that means the people who possess certain characteristics. Next, we have to give a short introduction and background regarding the issue to be discussed. Now, this is the work of the focus group member to write their responses on these issues. And we have to facilitate at that moment the group discussion. The group, actually the recommended size, we can say 6 to 10. Okay, and after that the members are asked to represent their report, but some not only that, actually 2 to 3 focus group always preferred for best practice. And at last we have to give a summary of at the end of the meeting, that what actually we have to do. Okay, so this is actually focus group discussion. Now comes to observation. It is basically one of the fundamental technique of data collection, where we don't have to control any variable, where we don't have to manipulate any variable. And this particular method has I want to say that it is widely used in the field of social sciences or in the field of experimentation anywhere. Now, there are some types of observation: systematic and unsystematic observation. Systematic observation is basically based on some explicit procedure or logic of scientific inference. Okay. In case of unsystematic observation, we can say that it is basically a causal observation made by the investigator without specifying the explicit procedure and the objective inference. That is, the objective inference is not mentioned here. Okay. Now comes to the participant observation and non-participant observation. So whenever we are saying about participant observation, that means the observer actually participant into the group, the particular group which is being observed. But here there are two types. That means sometimes the other members of the group knew that he is the observer, and his duty is that he actually observes the other members of the group. In that case, we can say that it is actually non-disguised participant observation. And whenever the observer actually don't disclose his identity, then we can say it is disguised participant observation. Now comes to the non-participant observation. We can easily understand the meaning from its name, that non-participant observation means in which the investigator observes the behavior of the other person. Okay. Now the advantages. No doubt observation is probably the most common and simplest method of data collection. It is one of the main bases of formulating hypothesis. And if we compare the other methods like interview, questionnaire, we can say that we can easily able to get data. It is very easy to get data through observation process. Now, disadvantages. Observation is definitely a very technical job. And in case of observation, we need particular expertise. Without particular expertise, what actually happens that subjective biasness definitely comes into the result, which actually hampers the main aim of the research. Now comes to survey, which is also very common. Survey methods are widely used for gathering scientific information, and we can collect information through survey method by asking question or recording people's answer. Now, there are two purposes for using survey method. First, it describes certain aspects or characteristics of population, and also it helps in testing hypotheses about the nature within a population. That means the particular population which we are taking, it actually helps to test the hypothesis regarding the nature of the population. Okay. Survey methods, no doubt, the data we can get, it's no doubt more accurate, and their methods have wide scope, and it is very frequently used in the field of social sciences, or also used in measuring attitude, scale, values, beliefs. But disadvantages, no doubt, it is time consuming, and it sometimes invites sampling error. That means whenever we are dealing with sample, we have to select the sample from the population, and by selecting the sample from the population, we have to be very careful regarding the inclusion and exclusion criteria of this selection. If there will be any mistakes, then the total sample will be wrong, and it actually hinders the result of the research. Now comes to the rating scale. Now, rating scale is basically defined as a technique through which the observer or rater categorize the object events on a particular continuum, where there are some numerals, and each numeral actually depicts a particular kind of meaning. There are different types of rating scale. First is numerical rating scale. It is very easy to understand that numerical rating scale, there is a continuum, and there are some numerals. Each numeral bears a particular meaning, and the task of the rater is just to put the particular attributes or phenomena on the particular rating which actually he or she likes. Now comes to graphic rating scale. Graphic rating scale, actually the total things is based on through a graphical presentation, and there are some descriptive cues, and each and every descriptive cues bears a particular kind of meaning, and we have to select the particular descriptive cues to indicate our views. Next comes to scale of cumulative point. Cumulative points, actually we can say the summated points. That means the person total score. That means the person supposed to be he is giving answer in a 5 points. So whatever the ratings of the 5 points, that is actually summed up. So that is called the scale of cumulative points. Next comes to the forced choice rating scale. Forced choice means there are some attributes or verbal statement. Now the duty of the rater is to select which verbal statement actually explain the person he is taking into consideration. Next comes to Q-sort technique. Q-sort, it is totally based on, actually used in defining subjectivity. Sir William Stephenson actually developed this method. Actually, whatever we are using in our psychometric test like TAT, Rorschach, totally based on this Q-sort technique. Q-sort technique actually measure the patient's progress over time. That is through TAT or through Rorschach, we can actually measure the nature of the relationship or the particular problem the person is bearing. So these are all under the Q-sort techniques. Next comes to the semantic differential scale, which is actually developed by Charles C. Osgood, and it is a type of rating scale which is aims to measure the connotative meaning of object, event, concept, etc. The next one is sociometry. This particular type, this is a rating scale, but it is actually presented through a graph that is called sociogram. Sociometry actually useful, but or sociometric method we are actually using to find out the relationship between the group. Like if you are taking 6 or 7 members, okay, and you are asking, okay, suppose there are two situations like movie or a dinner, these two situations. So your duty is to ask the participants, okay, just tell me with whom you want to go to that particular situation. Just tell the number of the person. So you have to mark it, and on the basis of this marking, we can able to draw the relationship pattern, and from this relationship pattern we can able to understand that who is the most popular member within the group and who is the least popular member. Not only that, the particular member which the other member don't like, the member who is rejected, the member who is eliminated, this type of relationship we can able to know this from the sociometric method, or we can say the graphical pattern which is known as sociogram. Now, the advantages, definitely used for behavior and not easily measured by other means. It is very quick and easy to complete. And in disadvantages, we can say that definitely it requires special skill for administration, and sometimes actually subjective evaluation comes. And these are the references I have used. Thank you.
Thank you, Shravani, for your nice presentation on data collection in social sciences. And I think it's very much useful for us, and we can apply all these methods in future for our research, the planning, or for our research purposes. And you have, can you hear me, Shravani?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have two questions. One from Sharbeshwar Shahu. I'm just reading the first question for you. When one should use, just a second, please. Just a second, please. Yeah, I'm sorry. When one should use data collection through a questionnaire and through FGD, and which one is more scientific?
Thank you for the questions. Definitely, I will suggest questionnaire is definitely much more scientific than FGD, because in FGD we have to take only 6 to 12, or you can use to some extent better a number of individuals, much more. Not you can use so many number of individuals, and it's totally based on the discussion of the group. So if the person do not have the particular kind of expertise, it actually creates a problem. So definitely questionnaire will be much more better, and questionnaire actually involves wide range. Okay, so definitely questionnaire will be better than FGD. Next one.
Thank you. The next question is from Balaknath Bhattacharya. Madam, in which areas of research focus group discussion will be preferred?
Focus group discussion, definitely you can use in case of particularly in kind of quantitative research, qualitative research. Definitely you can use in case of analytical research, or to some extent conceptual research, you can say. Okay, because the conceptual explanation is much more required in case of focus group discussion.
We can take one more question for you, and rest of the questions will be mailed to you. So this question is from Aryadeep Roy Chaudhary. His question is, how far is ethnography suitable for social science research?
Ethnography is very much suitable. Ethnography, actually, I don't use ethnography, so I will not be able to say so much about this thing. But ethnography is very much suitable for the research, because the main purpose of ethnographic research, it actually depends on your purpose. So what kind of research you actually choose, or what kind of hypothesis, or what kind of objectives you are actually taken into consideration, on the basis of that you have to select that whenever you have to choose in ethnography. I don't have so much knowledge regarding ethnography, but definitely considering the application of ethnography, you can say definitely can.
Thank you, Shravani. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to invite Dr. Sumanta Rudra, the Academic Dean, Bhaktivedanta Research Center, to give the vote of thanks for day one. Dr. Rudra, please.
Thank you, Dr. Tini Goswami. On behalf of Bhaktivedanta Research Center, I, Dr. Sumanta Rudra, Dean of the institution, take the honor to thank all the other collaborations, partners IQAC and Department of History, St. Xavier's College, Autonomous, Kolkata, Sri Jagannath Research Center, St. Paul's Cathedral Mission College, Kolkata, Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, and Department of Ethnology, History and Religion, and Gender Studies, Stockhome University, for having this successfully organizing this event. Bhaktivedanta Research Center aims to be leading research center and academic institute that is dedicated to preserving, researching, and disseminating the rich history, philosophy, and the cultural heritage of Bengal. We have started 15 research projects under the guidance of erudite scholars of national and international repute. Our mission is to excel in the qualitative research by distinguished national and international scholars in the diverse field of aesthetics, culture, comparative religion, history, and sociology pertaining to Bengal, to offer accredited academic programs, including PhD, MA, diploma, and certificate courses in the above fields, to update, maintain, and research a rich, diverse collection of manuscript, letters, memoirs, and books of India, to provide an inclusive academic environment for students and scholars, irrespective of their socioeconomic and cultural background, including gender, religion, caste, and race. I thank today's esteemed speaker, Dr. Kaveri Chakraborty, Dr. Srinjani Bhattacharya, Dr. Tinni Goswami, and Dr. Sharboni Chatterjee, who has enlightened us academically by their edifying speech. A special thanks to Reverend Father Dr. Dominic Savio, Principal St. Xavier's College Autonomous Kolkata, for gracing this occasion with his auspicious presence. It was our pleasure to have among us the Dr. Partho Prothim Ghosh, coordinator of IQAC St. Xavier's College Autonomous, Kolkata. I would also like to thank our MC and our technical team. And finally, I take the pleasure to thank all the respected participants who have stayed and cooperated us on the first day of the event. Thank you so much. I hope you join. I hope our joint endeavor has benefited you academically, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at the same time the conference, I guess, starts. Thank you so much, Dr. Tinni Goswami.
Thank you, sir. So now we will end our program for day one. So hope our participants, they got benefited with the lectures. And as I have mentioned earlier that those questions we didn't take up due to the paucity of time, we will be mailed to the speakers and they will attend your questions or will try to clarify your doubts. So see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow we will be going to have the session from 5 p.m. in the evening onwards, and it's a request to all of you, please be on time, and hope that all of you would maintain punctuality as well as discipline while we are having the sessions, and hope that